A Spy That Shook. New York City, 1779. The most beautiful secrets are always the most dangerous. In the ballroom of the British-occupied city, amidst the shimmering silks and the blinding gleam of candelabra, the conversation was a delicate, lethal dance. Yet the deadliest secrets weren't shared in hushed corners by uniformed officers. They were often discarded, like a spent fan or a soiled handkerchief, in the casual, dismissive presence of a mere woman. If you could peer past the powdered wigs and the scarlet coats, past the clinking glasses of Madeira and the forced jovial laughter, you might spot her. Not because she sought attention, quite the opposite, but because a woman of her poise and carriage was a natural center of gravity in Loyalist society. We know her only by a number, a three-digit phantom pulled from a secret cipher book, 355. In the meticulously coded world of General George Washington's most vital intelligence network, the Culper Ring, that number stood for a single, profound word: lady. Her identity remains one of the greatest, most tragic mysteries of the American Revolution. She was the ghost in the machine, the invisible asset whose information may have single-handedly saved the war for the American cause. She walked a razor's edge, a patriot buried deep within the heart of the enemy's headquarters. She was a silent weapon wielded by an unassuming Long Island farmer, an emotional tether to a melancholic New York merchant, and a source of intelligence so pristine and shocking that it traveled in invisible ink to the desk of the commander-in-chief himself. The stories say she was a woman of high birth, a fixture in the social circles that flirted, gossiped, and traded information with the most senior British officers, including the notorious Major John Andre. The stories say she was a source of critical intelligence, a whisper in the night that averted catastrophe. The stories also say she was captured, imprisoned on the hellish conditions of the HMS Jersey prison ship, where she may have given birth and ultimately met a fate of unspeakable cruelty, a sacrifice for a country whose very name would never know her own. This is the true, astonishing, and profoundly tragic story of Agent 355. The forgotten spy whose life illuminates the incredible dangers and extraordinary courage of America's first intelligence network. It is a story of how a single, nameless woman became the key to a revolution, and why, to this day, her sacrifice echoes as a haunting reminder of the true cost of American liberty. Part 1. The Genesis of the Invisible War. The Desperate Commander. By the summer of 1778, the nascent American Revolution was a desperate, bleeding enterprise. General George Washington's Continental Army had survived the brutal winter at Valley Forge, but surviving was not winning. The British occupation of New York City, a critical strategic and economic hub, was a constant, humiliating thorn in the side of the patriot cause. Washington desperately needed an edge. Not bayonets and cannons, but information. He needed to know the enemy's movements before they moved, their plans before they were executed. His previous attempts at espionage had been disastrous. The most famous failure, the capture and hanging of Nathan Hale, had provided a grim lesson. The intelligence war required not simply bravery, but cold, meticulous tradecraft, and above all, anonymity. This need led to the formation of the Culper Ring, named after the aliases used by its primary members, Samuel Culper Sr. and Samuel Culper Jr. This network was conceived by Washington's young, brilliant chief of military intelligence, Major Benjamin Talmadge. Talmadge, using the alias John Bolton, Code 721, established a chain of communication stretching from Manhattan across Long Island and ultimately to Washington's headquarters. The chain was a fragile, brilliant contraption of citizen spies, operating without uniforms or official recognition. It included Abraham Woodhull, Code 722, Culper Sr., a conservative, nervous Long Island farmer from Setauket, tasked with being the chief gatherer of information. Robert Townsend, Code 723, Culper Jr., a melancholic, well-connected merchant operating in the very heart of British-occupied New York City. Caleb Brewster, Code 725, a fiery whaleboat captain who risked the rough waters of Long Island Sound, smuggling messages across the British naval blockade. And Anna Smith Strong, a crucial, non-coded member, whose ingenious system of hanging specific laundry on her clothesline, a black petticoat indicating a hidden message, with the number of handkerchiefs pointing to the location of Brewster's boat, provided the ring with an untraceable signal system. It was this tight-knit group of courageous amateurs who would turn the tide of the war, yet they were missing a final, critical piece. They needed eyes and ears inside the inner sanctum of the British command, a source so perfectly placed that they would be above suspicion. The appearance of the lady. The first historical trace of Agent 355 is found in a surviving letter dated August 15, 1779. It is a communication from Abraham Woodhull, Culper Sr., to Benjamin Talmage, John Bolton. Woodhull, nervous and often overwhelmed by the pressure of his role, wrote, "I intend to visit 727, New York City, before long, and think by the assistance of a 355 of my acquaintance shall be able to outwit them all." The use of the number 355 was significant. The Culper ring utilized a complex, multi-layered cipher system, including a dictionary of over 700 coded words. When deciphered, 355 translated simply to lady. This single line of text is the most concrete historical evidence of her existence. It confirms that a woman, a lady, was not just aiding the ring, but was considered an essential element whose assistance was so promising that Woodhull believed she could outwit them all. The historical consensus, and the most compelling theory, is that this lady was a woman of high social standing in Loyalist-controlled Manhattan. In the 18th century, a lady was distinct from a common woman. She would be from a prominent, well-respected, likely wealthy family. This status, ironically, was her perfect camouflage. The double life of the lady. Imagine her life. The war had polarized society, but in New York, the Loyalists held court. A young, intelligent, and socially adept woman from a prominent family would have had access to the balls, dinners, and drawing room gatherings that British officers frequented. To the men in scarlet coats, a woman of her class was a charming distraction, an elegant accessory, harmless. This dismissiveness was her greatest asset. While the British command worried about pamphlets, dispatches, and armed rebels, they paid no mind to the seemingly vapid chatter of the city's society women. Officers would carelessly discuss troop movements, supply shortages, and even high-level strategies for future campaigns, all in the presence of a woman deemed too frivolous to grasp the import of their words. Agent 355's role was simple in concept, but terrifying in execution. She was to listen. She had to memorize, without taking a single note, the names, the dates, the destinations. She had to recognize the careless remark that hid a strategic vulnerability. She was a human sponge, soaking up the intelligence that the ring's main spy in New York, Robert Townsend, Culper Jr., could never access. Townsend, a Quaker merchant, could gather information from tavern talk, docks, and business dealings. But 355 was in the drawing rooms of General Sir Henry Clinton's inner circle. She was the final, high-altitude source of intelligence, the key that unlocked the plans of the command structure itself. The danger of her position cannot be overstated. Espionage was treason, punishable by hanging. For a woman of her standing, exposure would bring not only death, but the utter ruin and disgrace of her entire family. Every flirtation was a calculation, every smile a potential weapon, every overheard conversation a gamble with her life.
It is through Townsend that 355's information would have flowed. It is speculated that she met him in his well-situated Manhattan coffee shop, the King's Head Tavern, or that she would leave coded messages hidden in ordinary objects, a book, a piece of clothing, or a small, seemingly insignificant article of ladies' stationery. The intelligence she began to supply was astonishing. The Culper reports became exponentially more detailed, more strategic. They provided Washington with British troop numbers and deployment, exact figures on men, horses, and artillery, correcting the exaggerated numbers the British often publicized. Naval movements, warning of ships being prepared for specific assaults, allowing the Continental Army to pre-position defenses. Counterfeiting plot exposure. In one major coup, the Ring, possibly aided by 355, exposed a massive British operation to flood the American economy with counterfeit continental currency, a scheme designed to destroy the American war effort without firing a shot. This information allowed the Patriots to quickly track and isolate the fake currency. The shadow of Major Andre. The most critical and spectacular intelligence coup attributed to Agent 355 involves the British head of intelligence, Major John Andre. Andre was a dashing, charismatic officer, fluent in several languages and a favorite of Loyalist society. He was also a notorious flirt, known for charming the ladies of New York. This was Agent 355's golden, terrible opportunity. It is widely theorized that 355 became a frequent, close acquaintance of Andre. Her proximity to him would have been strategic, a direct line to the man running the entire British espionage operation. In the midst of their social exchanges, she would have gathered clues to his true focus, a plot so treasonous it threatened to end the American Revolution in a single surgical strike. Andre's primary focus was not on troop movements or supplies. It was on one of America's most celebrated generals, Benedict Arnold. Arnold, a hero of Saratoga, felt unappreciated and poorly treated by the Continental Congress. Nursing wounds and bitterness, he had begun a secret correspondence with Andre, offering to commit the ultimate betrayal, to surrender the crucial American fort at West Point on the Hudson River to the British. The loss of West Point, the key to the continent, would have split the American colonies in two, effectively winning the war for the British. The stakes were impossibly high. Washington trusted Arnold implicitly. The plan was a secret between Arnold and Andre. The unmasking of treason. Agent 355's intelligence was the thread that unraveled this tapestry of treason. The specific details are lost to time, but the outcome is history. The Culper Ring, and by extension 355, provided the critical warnings about a high-level defector and a betrayal that would cost the Patriot cause dearly. She would have observed Andre's unusual, feverish activity. She might have overheard a careless word spoken in his chambers or at a social gathering, a mention of West Point, or an ill-fated connection between the British spy master and General Arnold.
Townsend, receiving this chilling intelligence, scrambled to get the message out to Woodhull, who then passed it to Brewster. The urgency of the report would have cut through the normal communication delays. In a dramatic sequence in September 1780, Major Andre traveled in disguise up the Hudson River to meet Arnold. On his return journey, carrying the incriminating documents, maps of West Point and a pass signed by Benedict Arnold, he was captured by 3 alert American militiamen near Tarrytown, New York. The documents were exposed. Benedict Arnold's treason was revealed. The timing of this capture and the preceding flow of increasingly urgent intelligence from the Culper Ring strongly suggests that Agent 355 was the primary source that exposed the plot. She had risked everything to warn her country, and her work led directly to the capture of the British spy master, Andre. Andre was subsequently hanged as a spy, and Arnold fled to the British lines, forever branding himself the most notorious traitor in American history. The revolution had been saved thanks to a lady whose very existence was a secret. Part 3. The Fall of the Lady. The Price of Exposure. The exposure of the Arnold-Andre plot sent immediate and terrifying ripples throughout British-occupied New York. Sir Henry Clinton, furious and humiliated, launched a swift and brutal counterintelligence operation. He sought the source of the leak, the spy deep within his command, who had doomed his most critical strategic operation. The noose tightened around the Culper Ring. It is here that the story of Agent 355 takes its most tragic and heartbreaking turn. Historians surmise that her close proximity to Andre and the nature of the information revealed made her an obvious target of suspicion. In a world where her invisibility was her greatest shield, the success of her work had now made her terribly visible. The theories converge on the year 1780. Sometime after the capture and execution of Andre, Agent 355 was apprehended. The terrifying implication of her capture is deeply intertwined with the theory of her relationship with Robert Townsend. The historical lore suggests that at the time of her arrest, Agent 355 was pregnant. The father, it is widely believed, was Robert Townsend, a man she could not marry, whose child she could not publicly bear due to the nature of their secret lives. The capture of a pregnant woman from a prominent family with no official charges filed speaks volumes about the sensitivity and secrecy of the case. The British knew she was vital, but they could not expose the extent of her knowledge without revealing their own operational failures. The Gates of Hell, HMS Jersey. Her fate was sealed, not in a military court, but in the most notorious, horrific, and largely forgotten institution of the Revolutionary War. The British prison ships anchored in Wallabout Bay off the coast of Brooklyn. The worst of these ships was the HMS Jersey, an old, dilapidated fourth-rate warship that had been stripped of its masts and rigging and converted into a floating hell. While thousands of American soldiers and civilians died on the prison ships, a toll greater than all the American combat deaths combined, very few women were ever held there. The imprisonment of Agent 355, a lady in her condition, speaks to the immense threat the British perceived her to be. Conditions aboard the Jersey were a living nightmare. Overcrowding. Thousands of prisoners were crammed below deck into stifling, unventilated spaces. Disease, smallpox, dysentery, and yellow fever were rampant, earning the ship the nickname Hell Afloat. Starvation and abuse. The daily ration was meager and often spoiled. British guards were notoriously cruel, and the prisoners were subjected to constant psychological and physical torment. For a woman of her social class, used to the comforts and hygiene of a fine home, the suffering would have been compounded by shock. Yet the story goes that she refused to break. Interrogated and likely tortured to reveal the names of her co-conspirators, she remained silent. She carried the secrets of the Culper Ring and the child of Robert Townsend into the darkness of the ship's hold. The final silence. The final, heartbreaking chapter of Agent 355's story is her ultimate sacrifice. The most widely accepted lore is that Agent 355 gave birth aboard the HMS Jersey, a boy whom some theories name Robert Townsend Jr. But the conditions were unsurvivable. She did not last long after the birth. The official historical record is silent on her death, offering no date, no grave, and no final confirmation. She simply vanished into the fog of history. One more nameless patriot swallowed by the monstrous Jersey. In a final, profound act of dedication to the patriot cause, she took her identity, her secrets, and the names of the Culper Ring, Talmadge, Woodhull, Townsend, Brewster, with her to the grave.